Hey guys, welcome to math class. We are on lesson 15, which is decimals in the hundredths place today. Our essential question is, how do I read and write decimals in the hundredths place? So the first thing we're going to look at is our decimal place value chart again. We've seen this before, but now we are using a different place value, which is the hundredths, which is this place value right here. So we're going to practice reading some hundredths, some decimals in the hundredths. I will write a decimal on the place value chart, and we'll just practice some reading. So it's very important when you're practicing reading decimals that you actually read them. You actually say them out loud. It doesn't matter if you don't have anyone to talk to. You have to be fluent with reading your decimals out loud, right? We're not saying things like 2.4. No, that's not what we're saying. So we have to be fluent and know how to read them. So that's what this, we're going to do that for a minute or so. All right, so if I write a 3 in this place value, and I write a 4 in this place value, how do we read that? 3 and 4 tenths. That's from yesterday's lesson and the day before. Okay, but now what if I change that place value in? Now what if I have two digits, a 40 and a 4 and a 3? So now I have something in this hundredths place value. Now I have two digits on the right side of the decimal. Okay, so how would we read that? We would say 3 and 43 hundredths. So remember, if there's two digits, relate it to two zeros for the hundredths. If you're asking, well, what do I say? Well, there's two digits, so I'm going to say hundredths. Okay, also, let's think, well, what is the hundredths? Okay, hundredths is your pennies. Okay, if you look underneath, you have a penny here. Okay, hundredths is 1 out of 100, or 2 out of 100, or 3 out of 100, or 4 out of 100, or 5 out of 100, or 6 out of 100. Okay, so let's see. What if I had a 5 here, a 0 here, and a 7 here? Now, how would we read that? First of all, that's like having $5.07. So notice where the 7 is. Actually, let's notice where the tenths. Is there anything in the tenths? No, there's nothing in the tenths. That means you don't have anything there, but you do have 7 pennies. Okay, so we would read that 5 and 7 hundredths. 5 and 7 hundredths. All right, we'll have more practice with that in a minute. So let's read the question. How would you model this decimal on the grid? How would you write this decimal? Look at your denominator. You have 100. You have 100 pieces on this grid. How would you shade it, the model? What would you do? That's right. You would shade 48 of them. Now, shading isn't that great on these, so we're just going to kind of go like this, because that's 10. 1 100th, 2 100ths, 3 100ths, 4 100ths, 5 100ths, 6 100ths, 7 100ths, 8 100ths, 9 100ths, 10 100ths, 10 100ths. What's that? 20 100ths, 30 100ths, 40 100ths. 4 columns is 40 100ths. So if I have 40, I need 8 more shaded. There we go. Now we have 48 hundredths shaded. How would I write it? I put a 0 in the ones place. Why do I have a 0 in the ones place? Why do I have a 0 in the ones place? Because there's no holes. That's right, there's no holes. And I have 48 hundredths. Now let's examine that a little bit further. Look at your tenths place value. Look at your tenths place value. What's in the tenths place value? A 4. if I look at my grid, I also have 4 columns shaded. Those 4 columns are 4/10ths. Those are your 4/10ths. Now let's look in my hundredths place value. Sorry. Now let's look at the hundredths place value. Okay, what do I have there? I have an 8. Those are these 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 hundredths. So you put them together. In fact, I could write it in expanded form. Let me get a better pen. I could write it in expanded form. I could say I have 4/10ths plus 8 hundredths. And what does that equal? When I put it together, I have a 4 in the tenths place. I have an 8 in the hundredths place. All right. We'll practice with that again later. All right, here's a question for us. Max has 248 pennies. How many whole dollars does Max have? What fraction of a dollar is left over? Right? How many whole dollars does Max have? Where are our wholes? Where are our wholes? Remember, when I ask you a question and pause, the expectation is that you're saying the answer, or you're thinking about it. That means you're actively engaged in the lesson. My holes are right here. Okay? 100 pennies make $1. 100 pennies make $1. So how many whole dollars do I have? Where would I put that on my place value chart? Where would I put that on my place value chart? I'd put it under the ones place. Now, how many pennies or how many hundredths do I have here? Well, this was 100, 200, so that must be 48. That must be 48. It says, what fraction of a dollar is left over? This fraction of a dollar is 48 hundredths. It's 48 pennies out of 100 pennies. How would I read this? Well, if it was money, I could say $2.48. If it wasn't money, how would I read it? 2 and 48 hundredths. Good. All right. Each model represents the fraction of soccer camp spots that are filled. The large square is 1 whole. Okay? Each small square is 1/100th of a whole, 1 out of 100. 60 small squares are shaded. Now, let's look at it on the tenths grid. Again, the large square is 1 whole. Each section is 1/10 of the whole, and 6 sections are shaded. Let's write each one. So this one here would be 60 out of 100, 60 hundredths. Let's write that in our place value chart. 60 hundredths. Do we have any holes? No. Okay, we'll put a 0 there. Now, 60 hundredths. Well, if you notice, what do you notice about this grid and this grid? Do they look like they're equivalent? They should look like they're equivalent because they are. This is divided up into 100 pieces and this is divided up into 10 pieces, but the same amount is shaded. One of these columns is equal to one of these columns. So how many here are shaded? 6/10ths are shaded. Well, if I come over my place value chart and I want to show my 6/10ths, the 6 would go here. Again, I have 0 holes, and I don't have any hundredths. Oh my gosh, do they look exactly the same? Because they are exactly the same. They are equivalent. They are equivalent. so 60 hundredths is the same as 6 tenths. If I wanted to, I could take the 0 off here. And it would still 6 tenths, 60 hundredths. They are equal, they are the same. And we're positive because both of them have 6's in the same place value. All right, I'm going to pause there because the next part of the lesson will be our practice part of our lesson. So we're going to have a part 1 and a part 2. I'll see you in a minute.